All right, so today we're really diving deep into Louisiana politics, and specifically a deal that's been making headlines involving State Senator Cleo Fields. I mean, this guy's been around Louisiana politics for a while, right? State senator, U.S. congressman. He even ran for governor back in '95.
Yeah, he's got quite the history.
And now he's running for the House seat in that new 6th congressional district, but not without some serious controversy swirling around him.
You can say that again. I mean, you got to look at Cleo Fields' whole career, right? And put it up against the backdrop of Louisiana politics in general. It's a state with a super complex and honestly kind of a troubled history with race and politics.
No doubt, no doubt. And even today, you see the Republican Party really dominating the state government, which makes the whole issue of black voter representation even more, well, crucial.
Absolutely. It's all about having a voice at the table.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole deal, this alleged deal, so fascinating and, to be honest, a little unsettling. Fields has always been seen as a real advocate for black voters, a champion for their rights. But now he's being accused of making a deal that might have actually silenced those very voters he's supposed to represent.
It's a head-scratcher for sure.
It all revolves around the 2023 gubernatorial race.
Right, that's the crux of it. The allegation is that Fields basically made a deal, an agreement, to kind of, well, suppress or at least not encourage black voter mobilization during that race. And that ended up paving the way for, well, we know who, the Republican candidate, Jeff Landry, to win.
And, there were definitely some head-scratching results from that election. Landry won, as we know, but the voter turnout was, well, it was shockingly low, the lowest Louisiana has seen in over 2 decades.
Yeah, and I think what's particularly noteworthy is that drop in black voter participation, like significantly lower. And some folks look at that and draw a straight line back to this alleged deal.
Right, like Fields just stepped back and let it happen.
Exactly. Because, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's known for getting people to the polls, right? He's got those deep ties to the community, the churches, all of that. So to see those mobilization efforts just kind of absent during such a key election, it raises some eyebrows, for sure.
No doubt, no doubt. But I do have to say, I've also heard some folks say, well, hold on a minute. It wasn't just about this supposed deal. They point to other factors, like maybe those homecoming events at some of the HBCUs, historically black colleges, that might have had an impact on turnout, too.
Oh, absolutely. That's a really good point. It's complicated, right? It's almost impossible to pinpoint one single reason for something like this. Did homecoming play a role? Yeah, maybe. Was there some apathy, especially given like the history of black voter suppression in Louisiana? It's tough to untangle all of that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like a whole other deep dive just waiting to happen.
Right.
But look, regardless of all that, we can't ignore the outcome here, right? Landry's win has ushered in a whole wave of conservative legislation.
And that's really got people talking, hasn't it?
For sure.
I mean, you've got policies like universal school choice being introduced, restrictions on DEI initiatives, jig changes.
Yeah, even bans on transgender rights. It's a lot.
It is, and I think this is where that alleged deal, if true, becomes even more significant. You start to see how these policies, while, yeah, they're part of a conservative agenda, they have a real impact on black communities in particular.
It's that ripple effect.
Precisely. It's bigger than just one election.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about those long-term implications, especially for the very people Fields is supposed to be, well, representing. And that takes us to a really important question, right? Did this deal even change anything in terms of representation for black voters? We've got to talk about that court-mandated redistricting.
Right, because Louisiana was already on the hook to create that second black majority congressional district. That was already in motion.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder, what difference did this deal even make? And that's where it gets really interesting. Because while creating that second district was likely going to happen anyway, Fields' alleged involvement in this deal, well, it might have shaped how those district lines were drawn.
Giving him that advantage in this election.
Exactly.
So, I mean, was this calculated? Was this Fields making a strategic move? Or did he truly believe this was the best path forward for his constituents, even if it meant some short-term setbacks?
It's a tough one, and honestly, it's a question that voters are going to have to grapple with.
And it's not just him, is it? I mean, this whole thing is playing out against the backdrop of a much larger battle for fair representation in Louisiana. I mean, you've got groups like the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice. They've been on the front lines of this for years.
Oh, absolutely. They're the ones doing the real work on the ground.
Voter registration drives, legal challenges to those unfair maps we were talking about, and just constantly advocating for more equitable representation at every level. They even gave testimony during that redistricting process, pushing hard for those fair maps.
They're the ones really trying to make a difference.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you how important those grassroots efforts are when it comes to challenging the system and fighting for change. This is a long game, and it's way bigger than this one deal.
And it all circles back to Cleo Fields, doesn't it? Because
Right.
if he wins this congressional seat, is he going to be effective? Will this controversy dog him at every turn? How's this going to impact his ability to, I don't know, do his job, represent his people, and, well, balance all of that with his own ambitions?
The million-dollar question, right? Can you be a leader who makes a deal like this, even if you think it's for the greater good, and still be effective? Can you really keep the trust of the people you represent when those actions raise questions about your motives?
I mean, it's a lot to unpack, isn't it? It's a lot to think about, for sure. And, as we've been talking, it's clear that this whole deal and the potential fallout, it's really put Cleo Fields under the microscope.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
But I think it's important to remember he's not operating in a vacuum here, right?
Absolutely not.
This entire situation, it brings up these bigger questions about representation, about how politics really work, and about the choices people make when they're going for power.
It's like we're getting a glimpse behind the curtain.
Exactly. And, what we're seeing with Cleo Fields, it's like a microcosm of these challenges you see across the political system. It's that constant tension, personal ambition versus the greater good. When do you compromise? And what's the price you're willing to pay for it? Tough questions.
And you can't forget who ultimately feels those consequences the most.
You're right. It's the communities themselves, the people directly impacted by the decisions made in those smoky back rooms. And in this case, it's the Black community in Louisiana, right?
Right.
Their voting power, their representation, it's all at the heart of this.
And it highlights that this battle for equitable representation, it's never really over.
No, it's not. And it's messy, right? There aren't always easy answers, clear-cut, good guys and bad guys. As you continue to, follow Cleo Fields' career, follow Louisiana politics, just keep in mind all these nuances we've been talking about.
Think about those trade-offs, the compromises, the motivations behind the scenes, and ask yourself, who really benefits from these political deals? Are those benefits shared equally? Or do they come at a cost for some? Because those are the questions that really matter.
They do, and those are the questions that will keep shaping the political landscape, not just in Louisiana, but everywhere.
Exactly.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into this Louisiana political deal, and it's a lot to process.
It really is.
We always encourage you to keep digging, keep asking those tough questions, and keep the conversation going. This is just the beginning.